how concerned are we about this? Because, on one hand, yes, a lot can happen in the vacuum of one game. We saw what happened in that Purdue game in late January, and then you come back and you win what I think 6 straight after that. So sometimes these losses where you sort of bottom out happen, and it can serve as a way to reset, retool, and you kind of move forward there. Sunday's game felt like sort of the culmination of not so much the second half of the season, but more so the 3 previous games they had played prior to that. I'm talking Michigan State, Nebraska, and Rutgers, where um, you know you can't make timely shots. When you make timely shots, you got a couple banked threes going in for the other team, and really yesterday. And I know there's been talk that the flu has sort of worked its way through the team. Reuben Jones apparently lost 10 pounds while he was sick, and he gave it a go on Sunday. But still, you look at this team in general. Sunday's game to me felt like um, maybe their worst quote unquote effort of the season. Just a lot of, you give up 19 offensive rebounds. To me, that's an effort thing. That's being a step too slow. That's being out of position. Um, I felt like a lot of the threes that they missed were short, were clanking off the front of the rim. To me, right now, this looks like a team that has tired legs. And I don't know if that's an illness thing. I don't know if that's how the schedule's broken down. But, Sunday to me was more so a culmination of a lot of bad habits they've developed recently, as opposed to, you just had a bad day at the office.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I just wrote a news and views column on this. That okay, if Danny Wolf wasn't sick, and we questioned it upstairs, and everybody I talked to after the game said, man, there was something wrong. Even the substitution patterns, right? They seem to be getting him more breathers earlier, even when things, he just looked a step slow. I didn't think they were sending him a message. It seemed to me like he needed the rest. At the very least, he's worn down. And I guess that's what you would imagine, right? When you're playing through a 7-footer who acts like a point guard sometimes, and the usage, he's not used to this level of competition, being this aggressive offensively and having the offense go through him all the time like that is, a lot of us thought that was going to be Trey Donaldson. Then it became Danny Wolf. So I think he's tired. There's no question. And yeah, the flu has ravaged this team. They need Reuben Jones out there, guys, with the way that Roddy Gale is playing. That's a bigger loss than a lot of people really anticipated. We were excited when we heard that he would play, but it was clear that he probably shouldn't have played, guys. Or at the very least, he gave it a go, but he was nowhere near 100%. So he makes this team better. He was getting better other than that Michigan State game. I thought that he'd shown some really good stretches where, as Dusty May said, this is a guy who I feel bad for the Michigan fan base because he has not really shown them what he can do. And I think that he still has another gear there too. So really, it's about getting the legs back. I think the Maryland game is going to be pretty telling, right? Because as Dusty has said, we have bounced back from bad performances to have big wins. It's not like we've strung a bunch of stinkers together. And I think this team is going to be a little embarrassed with the way that things went against Illinois in a ninth straight loss to the Illini. That's crazy. So I'd be surprised if Michigan didn't give a better effort, but I did ask Dusty May today about the rebounding. Is it effort? What is it? He said we had a chance to set the tone. We fumbled a couple early, and then in the second half, they just took over. These guys need to be better about putting bodies on people. They need to be more physical. They are a bunch of nice guys, right? And I hate to use white collar again because there are times this year when they have been really aggressive, but they have got to step it up in a big way to have any shot to beat Michigan State on Sunday, let alone beat Maryland on Wednesday.
Yeah, it's also feels like getting an offensive rebound is like one of the more energizing things you can have as a college basketball team, and it's one of the most demoralizing things you can have happen to you. And it kind of snowballed, and then that allowed them to get in rhythm. I mean, 3 of their 11 threes in the second half were on second chance opportunities, but those guys started feeling good about themselves. And Illinois is a team that shoots a lot of threes as is, and then once they started to get them to go, which they haven't been able to do for a really long time, then they got all the confidence. Michigan's defense, they tried to go zone. They went back and forth between that, and man, neither was really working all that well because they spread the floor so well and went 5 out. No big guy a lot of the time. And then that hurts the rebounding too. Everybody's spread out. Vlad Golden's playing on the perimeter. Danny Wolf's on the perimeter. when those guys are at their best, closer to the basket. They're both good rim protectors, shot blockers. Danny Wolf is an excellent rebounder. Vlad Golden, not as good as he could be, maybe at his size. But it was just a culmination of all that, the matchup, and then you're playing your fourth game in a 9-day span when you had a shortened bench already and you had guys that were playing through illnesses. And I thought one of the more apparent moments that they are a little bit worn down, which, all right, I mean, it's an excuse, but don't look worn down, dig deep, push through. All those sorts of things can apply. Who knows how much you really can physically, because we don't know how these guys felt. But one of the moments was Fat Brooks comes in and Justin Pippen come in, and they're running around, grabbing offensive rebounds, tipping the ball out to other guys. Pippen, was playing with some good aggression. He got fouled 3 times and made all 6 of his free throws. Compare that speed that they were playing with and just the energy to what we saw throughout the course of the game. It was just different. So, but it doesn't mean that they played great offense or played well on defense or rebounded well in the moments that they could have anyway. So it was all coming together at once. And now it's a big bounce back spot against Maryland, where you do feel like this is your last chance here. It is your last chance at home. Luckily you don't have an NIT game coming where you're playing at home. This is your last chance at home to kind of get the vibes right. And if you do win, you have a chance Sunday to go in and get a share of the Big Ten championship at the very least. So potentially to get the outright title. So it's a big game in so many different ways. You want to feel good about yourself, get the confidence back. You want to chase the Big Ten championship, and you want to also just kind of figure some things out and show that you can improve in some of the areas that you're lacking.
Yeah, and you'd love for it too to be, sort of a tune-up game, heading into Michigan State, but it's not. We know that the schedule's backloaded. It's against a team in Maryland that's number 14 on KenPom. It's done, played some really good basketball this year. So I think digging deep and Dusty May said it Monday too, getting better on the margins could add up to a lot because it has just been so many things that have slipped in the last 10 days or so. I'll tell you what my biggest concern is right now, and this goes even beyond just the last 4 games, is that on a given night, whether it's Roddy Gale or Reuben Jones, and even when both are healthy or have been healthy, not sick, whatever you want to call it, you're not getting anything out of that 3 position offensively. And depending on the game, some nights you're not really getting much out of Trey Donaldson either. And we know that Namari Burnett has kind of historically been up or down. So right now, I think one of the biggest thing that rings as a concern to me is that you're already not deep, and not as deep as maybe you looked earlier in the year, but 40% of your starting lineup on most nights, and on some nights when all 3 of those guys are off, 60% of your starting lineup, you're just not getting enough out of those guys. And I don't know what's going on with Roddy Gale. I mean, it's been pretty much since the LA trip where he has just not been right at all. But this is one of the biggest, I think, drop-offs in play from a player at his peak that I think I've ever seen, because I think he had some really good games, in the early part of the season. For him to just kind of lose it, it's hard to pinpoint. But the best version of this team involves at least pulling your weight at the 3 to a certain extent, and a more aggressive Trey Donaldson. And I'll be honest with you, there are times where it looks like he doesn't want to initiate offense, or doesn't want to be the aggressor out there. And if Michigan's going to make any noise, forget about in these final 2 games, but the Big Ten tournament, NCAA tournament, they need much better play from their point guard.
Yeah, and let's be clear here. It's when you talk about Trey Donaldson, right? That puts more on Danny Wolf then, right? Because who else is there that can create their offense on this team, guys? Gale can't. You look at Namari Burnett; he's not that guy. You hold your breath with all due respect to Namari when he puts the ball on the floor, and you're thinking, "Oh man." A lot of times bad things happen when and he's improved in that area somewhat at times this year. All these guys are having a tough time finishing right now. At one point, I think the layups category was 6 of 13 for Michigan yesterday, and so they got to finish better around the rim. But Roddy Gale, when you get into the meat of the Big Ten schedule, every coach, and I've said this so many times, knows your every move, right? For Michigan State, right? Don't let Jace Richardson go left, so you better not let him go left. There are more guys to know because they go deeper. With Michigan, it's okay. don't let him go right. No, don't let him go left, right? But when it comes to Michigan's guys, right, they are limited. This is a limited roster of guys that can only do so many things. Roddy Gale is going to drive into traffic at times. It's not going to be pretty. You're going to have with Namari Burnett. Don't leave him as a shooter, right? Danny Wolf. Teams have taken away that 4-5 pick and roll. They just have, and that's what good coaches do, and that's what coaches in this conference do. So that's tough to overcome when you are limited at different positions. Everybody says, well, we got to mix things up and you got to tweak the roster and the starting lineup and so on and so forth. But you can only do so much with the guys that you have if you're that limited. So it comes down to making shots. And they got good looks. I asked Dusty May about that. Some people have said, and they wanted us to ask, hey, do you think they're shooting from too deep? He didn't think that was an issue in the Illinois game. I think in some games, you have an opportunity to step up a little bit and maybe get a little closer to that 3-point line, but you want to shoot it in rhythm too. It's not a problem, for example, for Namari Burnett, but Trey Donaldson is probably much better from 21 feet than he is from 24, like a lot of people. So, but really, a lot of the shooting comes down to confidence. Danny Wolf had an air ball, fellas, that was wide open. And when he does that, then he passes up good looks and drives into traffic. Trey Donaldson doesn't want to shoot. It looks like he's just trying to hit rim on some of his shots. And Roddy Gale at this point can't shoot. He's made 1 3 this entire year. So you got to hope that some of these guys step up. Reuben Jones, again, I think has more to give offensively. We know he can be a better shooter than he's shown. So to me, it really comes down to that. You got to make your shots. You need to get more from a healthier Reuben Jones. Hopefully, he comes back a little bit rested from the flu, and he can give them some minutes. It'd be great to get Sam Walters back too, guys. They need another body in there and another guy that can shoot. And even though he was sporadic when he was on, he was really on. So hopefully, get these guys back for the postseason.
I think Reuben Jones coming back is going to be an underrated development, and it might not even be something that people necessarily notice, directly because of him. But when Roddy Gale's on the floor, and I think this is partly why he only played 20 minutes last night. I think it was 20 minutes a game before that as well. And LJ Kaysen got more run. Is the spacing is just so screwed up when he's on the floor. People aren't really closing out far on him. They're kind of sitting back. He's afraid to shoot it at times. He did take the one, which was closer than some of his other attempts have been lately. And then, he'll kind of drive into traffic. And if he's not making that floater, which Michigan just was not making any of those shots yesterday against Illinois, who baits you into taking those, they defend the rim, defend the three. Then, other than his defense, which it wasn't really going well for anyone defensively yesterday for Michigan, there's not a huge point of having him out there. And I think the Michigan staff realized that. But then LJ Kaysen's not really hitting his shots either, and he's an even worse defender. So it's tough without Reuben Jones out there. But the Trey Donaldson thing is probably the most concerning thing out of this whole backcourt issue, because he scored in double figures 20 of his first 24 games. He's scored in double figures just once out of his last 5. So 4 games not in double figures in his first 24, 4 games not in double figures in his last 5. The assists are down. His overall involvement is down. I've been saying this, like if you track like they do in the NBA, dribbles per game, I feel like that's down for Trey Donaldson, probably up for Danny Wolf lately in the last 2-3 weeks. But I don't know that you're going to go far in the tournament without a point guard that's playing at a pretty high level, no matter how good your big guys are. At the same time, we've seen Trey Donaldson play a lot better. I think that's why this is frustrating to watch. And he has some spurts where he takes over, but he wasn't really finishing yesterday. They were kind of forcing him to take shots, and he didn't make them. And he couldn't really kick out to anybody because they don't help. And that's why Michigan ended up getting stagnant and just going to Vlad Golden for hook shots, which he was very good at. But it's 2 points and there's not much rhythm for everybody else. So all those things compounded into another kind of weird, tough, non-efficient offensive game, which is becoming kind of a trend. It starts with the backcourt because big guys are just kind of inconsistent overall too. Like a couple layups don't go, or, Vlad Golden missed all 4 of his free throws yesterday, even though he was very good, or a couple hook shots don't go. Then it's kind of what they are. Guards, if you're going through them, can create a little bit more. There's more variety to what you can get. So they need to get Trey Donaldson going. There's no question. Maryland's a great defensive team, number 2 in the Big Ten in defensive efficiency, so it's going to be tough on Wednesday. But if they could get him going and get a win, those would be two huge W's for Michigan going into what could be a showdown at Michigan State.
A few of these guys could really use a Greg Harden, a heart-to-heart with Greg, God rest his soul. I think, if you look at just the way they're struggling mentally, I think, with their confidence, and Greg was so good at that, Michigan sports psychologist extraordinaire, who we miss a ton. So I think a lot of it is mental. And yeah, there's some physical to it, but when guys are hesitating to pull threes, remember that Trey Donaldson guys that we saw at UCLA when he was just shutting the crowd up, or was it USC? It was one of the West Coast games where he took over, and you see that, and you know that he has it in him. I want to see that Trey Donaldson here and get these guys get their confidence back, as Dusty May said today.
It feels like with Trey, when the defense is set, like he just struggles to get stuff going. He's great when he's kind of playing with pace. They're backpedaling a little bit. Maybe the matchups aren't perfect for the defense, so we can find somebody else cutting or spotting up. But once it gets set, you need your point guard to create something in the Big Ten. Now, I think it's going to be a more free-flowing game in the tournament. Yep. Something obviously we'll talk about in a couple of weeks when they're in the tournament. But before then, you got to make sure you don't drop a couple lines, seed lines here.
Yeah.
Look, trivia question for you. And Clayton, you might know this, so if you do, you can refrain from it. But in Big Ten play, where do you think Michigan ranks in shooting the three among the entirety of the Big Ten?
In Big Ten play, 14?
I do know it.
15?
16th, 31.6%.
Yeah.
Which, you watch them have these games where they struggle to shoot the three, like, oh, it's an off night. It's an off night. It's an off night. No, that's kind of been what they've been this year, which is surprising, because I think we know that they're capable of much better. So we'll end with this on.
We got this stat too, but earlier in the year they were, and I know there were some outlier games. They hit 19 in the one game, but they were making 38.4% of their threes in their first 17 games. That's a pretty big sample size. You have some mid-major games in there. That was 20th in the country at the time. Now it's 27.9 over the last 12, 353rd. So, I mean, it's just an absolutely steep drop-off that you don't see that often.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's not. It goes against the way, like they're not going to win that way, because they're built to win that way.
Yep.
If they're not shooting the ball well.
I tell you, man, it's as a shooter back in high school. You lose your confidence, guys. It's like a place kicker or a golfer or anything else, man. It's upstairs, and got to get it back somehow. Hopefully they will. Sometimes though, it just takes one great game, right? You get it back, and you get on. Look at the 19. I'll go back to the 1989 Michigan team, and this is not the 1989 Michigan National Championship team, but they got their mojo back early in the tournament. And once they did, and Glenn Rice carried them, everybody started making shots. You start seeing shots go in like Illinois did in the second half of that game, fellas. Then, as Tommy Amaker used to say, it's contagious, and it really is. There's something to that.
Well, and look at Illinois. I was going to bring them up as an example. They've been shooting terrible from three for a long time, and they shoot so many. They are 16-2 when they shoot 27% or better from three. That's lower than Michigan's poor percentage, but they shoot so many of them, and they're an efficient team, and they have a lot of talent. That's all it takes for them to win games. And of course, they exploded, but 37%. It was just so many that they shot yesterday. They shot more threes than twos. So they're a little bit of a different case. But you're right. Like, you're this disastrous team. You lost 3 in a row. You lost by 43 to Duke a week ago. But if you look at it from their perspective, they were waiting to break out. They needed to prove to themselves they could beat a good team, especially on the road. Illinois does it. Now they're feeling good about themselves heading into the last. They only have one game left, but Michigan just needs that performance to maybe get going. I wrote this today. It's coming out in 5 minutes on our site. You're only playing well until you're not, and you're only not until you are. It changes. Mm-hmm. Michigan State lost 3 or 4 games. They were down 16 points at Illinois. They come back. Now they've won 5 in a row, including 4 straight over top 20 teams in the country. You have these ebbs and flows. It's all about how you end up playing after that, how you play in the most important games, and Michigan still has time to turn that around.
I want to end on hoops with this, because it was a great question, a great poll that you put out on the board today, Clayton. So where are we at these last 2 games? Are they more likely to go 0-2, 1-1, or 2-0? We'll just go around the room with that.
1-1. I said they would split Illinois and Maryland and lose at Michigan State, and I stand by that. I think they're going to come back with a spirited effort, and they're playing a team that Maryland's got a great starting five. They don't have much after that, so got to get off to a good start. But I believe they win that game. It doesn't help not having the students there. That place was not, the crowd was not into that game on. And of course Michigan didn't really give them a reason to.
No,
And
the cardboard cutouts may as well have been there yesterday.
yeah, it was terrible. And you know what? So it is what it is. But you got to overcome that, right? At least it's not Penn State. I don't know if you guys have watched a game there this year, but it's like listening to a game in a church.
I was thinking of the Penn State atmosphere yesterday while we were there. I blame Austin Fox and his brother Jason Fox for this.
Can I be clear about this? That was an unacceptable effort by the Westphalia crew. And I love Westphalia and I love those guys. But one time I saw Austin Fox looking at his phone. Everybody else is jumping around him, and he's sitting there looking at his phone. What's going on, kid?
And he didn't even order a Modelo like the rest of the Westphalians. I give them credit for at least getting a little juiced up and ready to go.
Exactly. Good job, other guys. Good job, other Westphalians. Austin, you suck. All right, go ahead, Anthony.
Wow. Well, I got 1-1 as well. I think they bounce back and beat Maryland. If they don't, then maybe they beat Michigan State. I think 1-1 is what's going to happen here in the last week, which is disappointing in terms of chasing a Big Ten championship. But I think that proving that you could win one of these last two games, which also means you figured a couple things out here and you played better than you have, would be really big for this team, seeding wise, confidence wise, everything going into the Big Ten tournament. Which, I mean, I think we'd love to see him win that thing, but at the same time, it's not life or death. It's not the end of the world either. You move on to the next week if you get bounced early there.
I'll make it 3 for 3 and say 1-1. I foresee kind of another one of those all hands on deck rock fight type of close wins on Wednesday against Maryland. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised if it was in the high 60s, low 70s. And then Sunday, I'm feeling probably like a 7-8 point loss at Michigan State. I think they'll play well. I think they'll give themselves a chance. They have played well for the most part on the road this year. Again, you hope that water finds its level with the 3-point shooting at some point. And at this point, if the light comes on in any of the games that they play moving forward, it's going to be at a massive and opportune time. So I hope that's there for them. I don't think that they're going to end the year with 3 straight losses. Contrary to what people on social media and the message board say, I still think this is a well-coached team. Given how they are constructed, I think maybe they are, or they have won maybe a little more than their construction would say they should this year. So they will get it figured out. I think there's a lot of good guys and a lot of experienced guys and a lot of players that have won a lot of games on their roster. But 1-1 to end the year, and then we'll go move on to Indy.